Quokka.Works has developed a utility for installing Greentree quickly and effectively, and it allows you to install as many Greentree systems as you require and as your resources allow on any machine. It also automatically configures the browser and all the peripheral setups that often make running Greentree and installing Greentree a little difficult. So first of all, I'm going to show this to you by uninstalling Greentree Installer so you can see how easy that is. And if you want to upgrade GTInstaller, you should first of all uninstall the old version. So to uninstall GTInstaller, simply go to your Add or Remove Programs option in Windows, search for GTInstaller, click on it and select uninstall. It will require administration access, and give it a couple secs, and boom, that's the end of GTInstaller on this machine. It really is as easy as that. To install GTInstaller is a little more tricky, a couple more steps, but still very easy. First of all, go to your favorite FTP program. I'm simply going to use File Explorer because everyone has that, and go to ftp.enableus.com. And if I can press dots instead of slashes, we'll go there. Go into the GTInstaller folder, and there's a file called GTInstaller.msi. Copy that down to your local machine somewhere. It's a very small file, so it takes next to nothing to copy down. And then right click on that and install it. Again, it will ask for administration access, and boom, your GTInstaller is installed. Really is as simple as that. Using GTInstaller, if you want to simply use it out the box, is not much more difficult. Simply go to your Windows key, having installed it, type in, do a search for GTInstaller and run it. It does need administration access, so allow administrator to go in. If it's the first time you've run GTInstaller, you may get it popping up saying you do not have the relevant environment set up. For example, you might not have all the Microsoft IIS components installed, and it will list those that need to be installed. So it does check the environment to make sure you have everything that needs to be installed on there. The first thing it asks you for is, where do you want to install your Greentree system? Well, I have a Greentree system, and I'm going to create a folder. I've got a folder called Greentree. I'm going to create a new folder for this system, and we'll call it Video Demo. The name is absolutely up to you. It's just where you want to have this Greentree system installed. Click OK, and the program will go away, or utility will go away and do a couple things. Then it will ask you what system do you want to install in there. Now that can be any zipped up file. You simply point it to, I've got a temp directory where I've got a copy of a system all zipped up, and I want to install that system in this location. So it could have come from a backup, it could have come from anywhere. It can be 7Z, it could be zip, it could be WinZip, any of those programs. It will unzip. So select the program that you want, where you want to install it from, and this utility will go and unzip all those files and put them into the folder that you've just created, and then we'll set up Greentree for you. So there we go. It's now setting up the services. It'll set up the IIS server. It will set up all the components and give you a README file. Downloads any relevant files that it finds missing off our FTP site. And there you are. That's the Greentree system set up. I can click on OK. It goes away. And if I go into that Greentree folder and go into that video demo, there is the Greentree system all set up. A couple little things in here that are important. There is a little bit more setup that you need to do inside Greentree if you want to use the browser, and that is stored inside this file called GTInstaller readme.txt. So I'll just open that up, and you can see it gives you a few instructions that need to be followed. I'll come on to that very shortly. It puts all the icons that you need into a folder called Tools, if we go in there, we can see we can start up services, shut down services, log in as single user, log in as multi-user. By default, it assumes you're an administrator, so in there it sets up some admin type things like print and task, queues, certify, and other options for the more advanced users. I'm going to go here, I'm simply going to start up this Greentree system that I've just installed, and I'll choose to run it as administrator. And the Windows services that have been installed already through that GT installer, there you are, it's fired them up. Now I can log in as a user, and here we are logging into that Greentree system. Just let it start up. It's a brand new system, so it might take a couple of seconds for the database to do all its whirring and girring. And we'll log in as the super user. It's just a standard demo, and there we go. That's Greentree up and running in multi-user mode, and I've done no setups whatsoever. This GT installer utility did it all. I won't load the desktop for now. Now, remember that README file. There are a couple things we need to do, and simply follow those instructions down there and you'll find it. So we need to go into System Setup, Browser Application, and change the host name to Anguza, which is the name of this computer that we installed on. And set the port number 1 to 9220 and the other to 9221. So let's go and do that. System Setup, Browser Application Maintenance, the host name to Anguza, resolvable address to Anguza. Obviously, different environments will need different settings there. 9220 and 9221. Go back to that README file. It then also says we need to go to the application maintenance, the website settings tab, and we need to copy that path in. So we'll simply do that. Go back in there, website settings, copy that path in, and then save it, or do a confirmation, say yes, and create a batch file. And having gone through that, so we've saved the button, we accepted the warnings, we created the batch file, we now need to do the update. You can, from within Greentree, update now. However, if you do on a system where you do not have administration access, that may not work. So I'm going to just play it safe. I'm going to go into the folder itself, and I'm going to run syncwebrootfiles.bat as administrator. That is doing exactly the same thing as saying update inside Greentree, but it's doing it with administration rights. So there we are, we've done the update, we've got it all running. So we will start the web services now, and you only have to do this once on the system because that setup is now stored inside Greentree, so every time you start the services, the browser will work on the system. Just let it finish its little installation. It's confirming I can use those ports. Again, it's the first time those ports have been used on this computer. So I'll say, yep, allow access, and with any luck, our browser will now work. So we go back into there, go into Tools, go into Browser Login, and it opened up on another screen. I'll just open it on this screen, and there you are. There's our browser running. Login is super, and again, and hey presto, we are logged into that Greentree system, and we have the browser up and running. All of that complications, all the setup of the IIS server, the setup of the services has all been managed by GTInstaller and set up there for us. So if you go and look at the Windows services, for example, and we go down to the Greentree section, there's a number of Greentree systems I've got, and there's the database for this new system. There's the app server for the new system up and running. A few other things that it does. So we'll just come out of Greentree now. When you've finished with that system, you want to tear it down, you no longer need it. I'll just close all these other windows. We go back into the root directory of that system we've installed, and there are a couple other things in there. If I run GT cleardown, it will entirely remove that Greentree system from this computer, including all the services and the web environment and the browser environment will be removed. Just before I do that, however, there's also this Greentree bat file. I find it very useful. If you run GT bat, it will ask you what version of Greentree it was. It's not terribly important, but I think it was 2021.2.0. 2.0. Ask for a description, so my demo. And I'll stop it there because what it will do is it will back up all the important files of that Greentree system so that you can save it somewhere else or move it, so it just does a backup of your system. I'll abandon that there because we don't need to back this system up. But what I will show you is how to clear a system out of your environment. Again, simply running that as administrator. It asks for confirmation. Are you sure you want to remove the system from your laptop? Say yes. And it goes through and does a clean shutdown of Greentree. Make sure there are no clients that are logged in there, and we'll safely shut it down to remove it. Just let that run a little bit. It does take a couple of seconds for Greentree to shut down elegantly. There we are, the system is shut down, and now it closes the services if they're running. Interestingly on this, quite often if you've got a corrupt system or a difficult environment, you may have orphan processes left running in the background. This does go through and clean up any processes that might be running in the background that shouldn't be. And there we are, that Greentree system is now removed. It does leave the log files there for you and a couple little files, so the log files are intentionally left there in case you want to go and see what's happened. But from here, if you really don't want that system, simply delete it, and that's your system cleaned up off your environment. Finally, I do want to show one last thing, because it can do a lot more than I've just let on. Those are the simple out-the-box features. If you go to kb.aod-cloud.com, that's where our knowledge base resides, and I'm already logged in, so it's giving me all the information. If you haven't got a login, simply register. It is free, it doesn't cost anything, and you'll have access to this. And I'm going to do a search for GTInstaller. And there we are. Set up Greentree in a folder using GTInstaller. And if I go to that, it's got all these instructions plus more that I've just run through. And if you want to run GTInstaller from a batch file or from the command line, there are a whole lot of other functions and features you can do. For example, you can set the logging level, what level of logging it does. If you want to automatically create Greentree systems as part of an overnight batch or for testing, whatever the case may be, you can run it in silent mode, which means that it won't ask for any user confirmations. It will just go ahead and assume the defaults. You can repair Greentree setups. You can just update any files. You can kill web services, etc., etc. And there's all this information on there, details about each of the shortcuts it takes, and various other configuration options and what it's set up in the ini file, etc. So that's a knowledge base article on how to use it. And one final thing, if you do set this up and have a development team and you're creating systems and tearing down systems on a regular basis, on the program data file, the it's the default location. You can put this in other locations. It does install a little GTInstaller ini file. If you open that up, and you can go in and change the default behavior of the Greentree installer if you require it. So for example, you can point it to a different ini file there. You can say we never want websites created, so set that to false and it won't create the IIS website information, etc. You can also, if you've got port numbers that needed, you want to reserve certain port numbers, the Knowledgebase article goes through some more detail. So these are the initial port numbers that it sets up by default for the database. These are the port numbers it sets up by default for the app server. If you want to reserve a port number for the system permanently, for example, so that might be a demo system that you build and take down regularly, simply take the auto off the end there, and that port number will be permanently reserved for that system. So it's got all your port numbers that you can use, etc., and the number of defaults. So a very easy system to use, one that we certainly in this at Quokka.Works, for our development environment, we are probably creating and tearing down systems 2 or 3 times a day, and that's the utility that we use to do it. Hope you found that useful, and good day and good luck. Bye now.